Hey, my name is Jeremy. I'm the guy who sits by the wall over there, and the topic that I chose was Interindividual-Intergroup Discontinuity. For anyone who doesn't remember, that's the discontinuity or the difference between interactions amongst groups and interactions amongst individuals. So what is this difference? Well, groups tend to make decisions that are more egocentric, self-serving, or competitive, while individuals tend to behave much more cooperatively and just fair in general. Now, I don't know about you, but to me this doesn't really make much sense. People naturally become part of a group because of their ability to cooperate. Why would a bunch of people who work well together not work well together with yet more people? Why are groups so egocentric? Well, this is not as easy of a question to answer. Our textbook offers some simple explanations that it's, quote, due to people's general reluctance to cooperate with members of an outgroup, and that, quote, emphasizing group identity can also undermine cooperation between groups, which is true, but where's the evidence? Before we get into what I've found in my research, let me explain this integral part first. How do we test people's cooperativeness? In psychological studies on behavior, a common tool is the prisoner's dilemma game, or PDG. In this game, a single person or a group of people are pitted against another individual or another group, and they're both asked to make a choice, either cooperative or competitive. So if two teams have two choices, then this grid here represents all possible outcomes. Now this is the traditional value setup. If you're both competitive, you both lose, like a war with large casualties on both sides, both earn little to no points. In the adjacent squares lies the incentive for a team to be competitive. They'll earn maximum points possible per turn in this game, while the cooperative one loses. If both are cooperative, then both earn reasonable sums. And sometimes there's a third choice, withdrawal, which is basically saying that you don't even want to be involved. The outcome of this is fewer points for both teams than if they were both just cooperative. By changing the values, you can test for different amounts of cooperativeness. Now we can get on to the studies. Hypothesis: the fear and greed perspective. The gist is that these two aspects of human nature have the greatest influence over interindividual-intergroup discontinuity, and that we could test for specific human behaviors that are an expression of fear and greed. Experiment 1. Schema-based disgust. The idea here is that groups who trust each other also understand that trust leads to cooperative behavior. Thus, they expect cooperative behavior from the other group and exploit that to their benefit. So groups who trust each other are likely to betray each other and wind up being more competitive than groups that don't have that trust. So they got some people. So here you can see the setup for the game, all the choices that can be made and all the points that can be earned by either your team or the other team. But before I pass out the ballots and have you make your selections, just gotta ask you a quick question about these paintings here. Which one's your favorite?
I like that one.
Yeah, that one's cool.
Yeah, that one's okay, I guess.
Oh, well that's a coincidence. The other group also chose that same painting as their favorite. Okay. Looks like the other group chose the other painting as their favorite.
I guess we have some things in common with those guys. We can trust them. Well, we don't have that in common, so who knows what they're like.
And as a reference, they did the same with individuals, and results were positive. Groups who liked the same painting were actually more competitive than groups who liked the different ones, and both were more competitive than individuals. Experiment 2. Identifiability. The idea here being that people make selfish decisions while in a group because they feel anonymous in a crowd. So this time... Okay, so here you can see the setup for the game that you'll be participating in today. There are another 4 participants on your team, and there's a second team that we have across the hall. Once you've made your selection, I'll come back and collect the ballots. I'll see what you've chosen, as will the other members of your team and the other team. Once you've made your selection, I'll come back and collect the ballots. Only I and the other members of your team will see what you've chosen. There was also a scenario C and D, in which individuals were told that they were playing this game against other individuals. So in scenario B, the other group doesn't see the participant's choice, giving them that sense of anonymity. So this was predicted to be the most competitive scenario, and results were positive. Groups in scenario B were the most competitive, followed by A, while individuals in groups C and D had insignificant differences in cooperation. Experiment 3. Social support. This is the behavioral hypothesis that when someone shows competitive tendencies or makes competitive choices which have the potential to benefit their group, those behaviors receive support from other members of that group. And you're in a 5-person group, and there's another 5-person team across the hall. Anyway, first 2 players on your team already have made their choice, and you're all using the same ballot. So here you go. So you're on a 5-person team, and you're each voting individually. So here's your ballot. Group A was more competitive as predicted, even though both options were equally supported by other group members. So according to experimental evidence, this is why groups aren't as cooperative as they could be. But these are more like specific examples. They aren't really a solution to the problem. Experiment 4, reducing intergroup conflict. So here's the setup for the game, and this grid shows all the possible outcomes for your team and the other team. Now, here are your ballots for round 1. Here are your ballots, but before you make a selection, consider this. If you were to choose competitive and the other group the opposite, what would happen? Or if you were to pick cooperative and them competitive, what would happen then? What would each team earn in each of these cases? And what choice is the other team likely to make in the following round? Now, this same test was also run on individuals who were more cooperative than both the groups shown here, but, quote, intergroup competition was reduced from 42 to 24% when groups were asked to consider how their choices would affect their opponent's subsequent choices. So, findings from this research basically say that the best way to reduce intergroup conflict is to think about the consequences of your choices and the influences that your actions have over others. Think about the future. Consider the other side's perspective and try and make choices that objectively benefit the both of you. The reason I chose this topic isn't because it's something that's affected me specifically, but because it's just an aspect of human nature that I think keeps us from being better people, better families, better countries. So use your understanding of human behavior from this class to be a more fair, objective participant in every group that you're a part of. Thanks. These are all the studies that I referenced in this video, and this is the free program that I used to animate it.